Welcome to Connect, Curate, Create, where we're on a journey through the arts and creative industries. I'm your host, Dr. Tim Butcher. If you're anything like me, you love learning about art and creativity. In each episode, I ask artists and creatives how they navigate life, work, and more besides. They generously share their stories and offer invaluable insights that you and I can put into action. As the author of Creative Work Beyond Precarity, I blend my mission to give artists a fair go with my academic smarts, to ask the questions that draw out lessons we can all learn from. For this bonus episode, contemporary artist Josh Foley invited me to an exclusive preview of his new exhibition at the Gallows Gallery at Launceston College in Tasmania. Surrounded by Josh's paintings and sculptures, we discuss various aspects of his practice and the place of art in society. Josh shares deeply considered reflections on how he maintains flow and continuity across the various forms his work takes, how his art holds potential to inspire and provoke, and how, as he begins a new chapter, he is looking back through his archives to identify what he'll explore next. Be sure to also check out the show notes for highlights and links that you can use to shape your own journey. If you learned something from this episode, follow us on your favourite podcast app and tell your friends about Connect, Curate, Create. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I am back in Launceston and in another incredible space, a new adventure for the podcast. We are in a gallery space. So you might hear some background noise, and it's not just a gallery space. We're in the Gallows at Launceston College. And right behind us are classrooms, and we're in the Performing Arts building. There's all sorts going on around here. But I am here at the invitation of Josh Foley, contemporary artist based here in Launceston. Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for welcoming me into this space and helping me set up in this space. I mean, yeah, we've been at work now for almost an hour getting set up for the podcast, but you've been at work here for quite a while, I assume, because all of your work is up here on the walls.
Yeah. Well, I only had to kind of put the works where I wanted them, and the teaching staff hung them for me. So
okay,
they were kind enough to do that. So thank you to the teaching staff. And yeah, so as far as exhibitions go, this is probably one of my more like leisurely ones.
Yeah,
which is a total welcome kind of change for me.
Okay,
generally I'm like tearing my hair out. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Well, that I suppose I was quite surprised this morning. You know, you said yesterday you messaged me and said, "Hey, why don't we meet at the gallery instead of my studio?" And
yeah,
and you seem really chill about it.
Yes. It's I think my studio's like organized, but it's like still not as nice as this space. Yeah, and I guess all the works are up here that we can speak to, and yeah, probably just it's got a kind of theatrical. I do have a penchant for the theatrical too, and I like the fact that we're set up in the middle of this space. And
yeah,
yeah,
I sense that, Josh. So for those of you listening to the audio, this is another video recording as well. So you can also watch the video recording and see in the frame there are 5 of Josh's works.
The correct posture.
But yeah, look, but that penchant for the theatrical, I met you for the first time this morning, and you were getting out of your car. I mean, what's more theatrical than Josh Foley's car? Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, I like I mentioned, I drove past a gentleman getting some equipment out of his car, and I thought, oh, that must be Tim. So I parked, and then I waited so that when I saw you come up, I could get out of the car and be like, hey, because it's, you know, I guess it is a bit of a presentation on the eyeballs, the vehicle, and I guess how we're speaking about your project being about trying to engage with audiences who might not be so learned about art, and making them feel welcome and able to, sort of participate in that dialogue. I guess in some ways my vehicle is sort of an attempt. I mean, this is making it sound really profound, which it didn't start off like this, but in hindsight, it does sort of act as, maybe a kind of like a vehicle to engage with the public, with my art, in a way that, I mean, they can just kind of walk past it in the street, or that I drive past them, or, this kind of thing. But it started because I'm really pretty obsessed with painting on like objects and things, that have, more than one surface, because my work is talking about kind of space in a way, and relief space, and illusory textures and this sort of thing, and and so I suppose an extension of that is playing with painting on objects. And I was actually just painting somebody's house, like that classic thing of when you say you're a painter and people assume you're a house painter. I actually was painting someone's house one day, and I had leftover paint, and my car was there and the paint was there. So, I just started slapping it on. And it's been, I guess that's why I'm going to exhibit it as part of the show tonight, because it's been a big journey, actually, taking it from those initial marks with the house paint to the kind of more refined kind of finished thing it is now. And sometimes that's been a little fraught, because, if I've got my actual things that I'm working on, like important things like exhibitions and whatever, you don't really put time aside to be like working on your car, because it's sort of just a bit random. But after my recent exhibition in Melbourne was done, I came back to Launceston and thought, before I do anything else, I'm gonna fix this car up, and part of that maybe is a little bit so that my kids weren't so embarrassed, because the state it was in was had a lot of like white gestural marks with like coloured spray paint, and then there was like the burgundy car colour underneath. So it did look pretty like weird and out there. So I could empathise with them. So then I actually got some automotive paint and experimented with that, and sort of like finished it off properly. So it's still like pretty trippy, but at least it looks more like a normal car, I suppose, or at least it looks professional now.
Yeah.
Yeah, whereas previously it just looked like someone had just like lost the plot.
Yeah. So it's almost sculpted, I would say. I mean, one thing that struck me, so I'd seen photographs on your Instagram.
Right, yeah.
But I hadn't seen it up close. And then, so you've got, you were telling me that there's an epoxy material that you're using in there as well?
Yeah, it's this putty called Milliput, and you can use it for all sorts of things, like fixing pipes and whatever else. But it's kind of great. Like, I've actually got some on my phone.
Yes.
If the camera will see that. But that was my son Odilon's idea.
Nice.
But the great thing is it'll just stick to anything, and then when it dries, it's like literally like a rock. There's, I guess it's a really fun way to extend some of those sculptural spatial ideas I have about like painting and materiality that doesn't involve, for instance, if I was using clay and doing the ceramic process, there's kilns involved and, it's a big sort of deal. So it's really kind of handy, and I'm probably one of the few people from the art shop that buy it. I seem to be, because I usually just clear them out. It's like I just like, it's like I've got an addiction to it or something.
Yeah.
It's like I just need to have a few packets just on hand, just in case.
Yes.
Yeah.
Odd. Well, and that's important. You mentioned the art shop, so Launceston Art Centre, and Stefan was the connection. So
of course. Yeah.
After I interviewed Stefan, and he mentioned you, and I said, it'd be great to talk to Josh, because I've seen your artwork around town. Not been to any of your exhibitions and not met you in person before. So, just really intrigued. And I mean, what you've already describing to us is so many aspects to your practice. And before the interview, you were telling me about the performance side of it, which we can come to later.
Yeah.
But I think before we get there, it'd be so great to go back to, where did it all begin? How did you become an artist?
I sort of feel like there's not been any kind of break really from when I was born until now.
Yeah.
The only sort of significant I think moment in relation to not necessarily whether or not I was going to be creative, doing something creative as my main occupation. It was more to do with whether or not that would be like in a more like graphic sense, like making comics and things.
Mm-hmm.
And then the transference of that to then being like, well, I think I might actually make paintings and make that the main thing. And that was around when I was 14.
Yep.
Yeah, grade 10, and my friend's parents had a book on Brett Whiteley and his extravagant and glamorous lifestyle appealed to my particular sensibilities at that time. I won't elaborate too much just in case it's inappropriate, but anyway, it was I think that kind of made me think that that would be an interesting thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, but prior to that, I'd been more into making comics and animations and reading comics and that kind of thing, which is interesting actually now, because I have a student who I teach every week, and I'm actually helping him make a comic.
Yeah.
And so through doing that, it's sort of reconnecting with that, grade 9 version of me that was like sort of into the same thing. But it also makes me kind of analyze the whole kind of process of that differently. And so that's kind of interesting. And I mean, I am still interested in all that stuff too, and sort of vaguely making a comic of my own at the moment.
Yeah.
But thus far, I've just been way more interested in like the frames for the action. Yeah. There's nothing inside.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. No, I make photographic scenes.
Yeah, right.
And have run a few workshops about zine making and the importance of self-publishing. And it's a form of self-expression. That particularly at that age, that formative age that you would have been at. So and you would have been, and you said you read a lot of comics. So what was your favorite comic?
Generally, I would I would follow the pencilers.
Yeah.
So I was more interested in the artist and the art.
Mm-hmm.
So not necessarily. So for instance, Joe Maggioria and Carlos Pacheco were my favorite two pencilers, and say Joe Maggioria was drawing for the X-Men, I would just collect those.
Yes.
And then he swaps to something else. So I remember Carlos Pacheco was doing the X-Men, and then he changed to Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
And so I just swapped.
Yeah.
Because I was just interested in, but then I would also just buy random ones as well. So I've got a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I suppose I was going to ask about your influences. You mentioned Brett Whiteley's work. Was what took you from comic?
Yeah.
To
he was definitely important early influence. Like these days, I still enjoy some of his work, but I think I'm more circumspect about it. And I'm more like nuanced in like what works I like of his and for what reason. Like I'm probably more interested in his earlier abstract work.
Yeah.
Whereas when I was in grade 10, I, really get pretty kind of zoned in on all the like weird kind of stoner sort of vibes that he kind of worked with. Although it was like a huge moment for me when the QV mag had a touring show of like previous Archibald winners, and that Art, Life and the Other Thing, one that he won in like 1976 or something like that. I was obsessed with that artwork, just loved it, tried to, do my own version and whatever, even though I wasn't like a junkie in, grade 10. But so essentially it's about his heroin addiction and stuff.
Yeah, sure.
It was like, it's a great work. It's definitely one of his better ones. And seeing that in the flesh, that was
awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Wow. Yeah.
No, it's Oh, look, I could go off on a tangent about influences and so on. But where did that take you next?
I guess. So and then from that juncture. So probably grade 10, and I guess trying to emulate Brett Whiteley to an extent, but through my own kind of particular lens, I started to get into. Working more like with acrylics. And then, the first time I bought oil paint, I didn't know anything about it and was really confused because it didn't dry. So, I would stay up all night. It's about the same time I started drinking coffee. And so like, I was just totally obsessed. And then that's all I was doing.
Yeah.
And like this oil paint, I just got because it looked cool. And then because it didn't dry, I was like, oh no, I've done something wrong. Like, I went back in there and then they were like, oh no, it just takes a few days to dry. Yeah. And I was like using it on paper and stuff. So it's like not really ideal, but so that, so it's just like those little moments where it's like, oh, okay, interesting. And then I'm like, oh, well, I guess you could like blend more with it, because it doesn't dry so quickly. And it's those little discoveries. And then I guess from there, it's just becomes this, I guess, progression of like, discoveries really. Yeah. Like grade 11 and 12, I suppose, was it's very unsettled in a way. Yeah. Like when I sort of started on that adventure, I was very obsessed and focused on a very particular sort of way, but then I started to be more expansive with, what I wanted to do with things. And I guess that's since then probably always been a part of my practice, but then the kind of nexus of the interest started to maybe solidify around 2007. And I started to make works that were about, like relief space and painting paint and, the like creating illusion of texture and that kind of thing. And so that probably was where the journey of kind of where I am now began. Yeah. And that was I think that was like the year that I had my first solo show in like on the mainland. So
Yeah.
I suppose when I got that show, and I'm pretty sure it was by accident too, which is like another story, but I really kind of doubled down on like, all right, I've got to make this really great and blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah. And then I suppose now I suppose I'm interested in playing with the contrast between like the relief space, the kind of modernist space of the painting as an object, but then in relation to, you know, like the Renaissance kind of Euclidean space, but really like kind of emphasizing that dynamic.
Yeah.
So like these recent works behind you, they're sort of playing around with that. So there'll be like objects that could potentially be like attached to the surface of the canvas, and then some of the motifs are more like wispy and kind of, you know, fading into the distance sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's kind of and I'm also kind of obsessed with more and more like materiality and using different surfaces and textures and things. So yeah. Well,
I mean, what you were telling me about just now about your first experience with oils, and then your you know, how you go to the arts centre for your materials, and your phone, your car, and all these materialities. It just, there are so many layers and textures. Sort of for me, I was telling you before the interview, you know, there's a thing for me about having something you can touch, a tangibility, and your work makes me want to to go and touch it.
Well, I guess I kind of delight in that, too, and to some extent, like, I wouldn't say I'm a Luddite, like I'm not like anti-technology, but I think I see it in a relationship that its power is like kind of negated by the power of like just, you know, material existence of you know, like I guess organic structures. And I suppose those contrasts and where they intersect, actually an example of this is like a really great show. It's down now, but Vicky West's show at Sawtooth recently that I saw, there were some really amazing ways that she had kind of investigated like her practice and her relationship to country, but also like one work in particular was it was like a weaving that had been done with some fibre, but then parts of it were done with like it looked like cable or something, you know, like electric fibre, and you couldn't really tell, until you went up close to it, and I looked and I was like, oh, that's and so like that sort of thing, is definitely I think stimulating.
Yeah. Can we go back? You said 2007 was a really important year for you. Where were you at in the world?
I was living in Heidelberg.
Okay.
And just in a little apartment with my sister and brother-in-law, and working at an art shop in Box Hill, and just plugging away at it, really. You know, I'd set up this little studio and a lounge room, you know. And I guess they were pretty accommodating, so I you know.
Was that before or after art school?
After, I graduated in 2004, and then I started art school when I was 17, so I wasn't even.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like I was young for my grade, so
Yeah.
it was like halfway through first year uni. I turned 18, so
Yeah.
it was like.
How did that happen?
I don't know. Maybe my parents just wanted me out. Like, you got to put this kid in school.
Because you're from Launceston.
Yeah.
And then you were 2007, you were in Melbourne, at Heidelberg, Box Hill.
Yeah.
But,
from then until about 2009, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then had my first child, Coco Jean, in Melbourne, and then my partner Nikki and myself both come from here, so we thought, just for family and that kind of thing, to move back, and moved back down here, and it's like, it's pretty great. The thing is, in Melbourne, like, I was just living out in the sticks, Heidelberg, McLeod, it's just not far from like Eltham and all these sorts of places. And there is that tradition in Heidelberg too of like landscape painting, so that I kind of appreciate. And like Heidi, the museum was just down the road, but I was just kind of doing what I do down here anyway, really, just like working in the studio a lot, and wasn't like I was, living the high life or anything. So, it translated pretty well to coming back here. And
no, I suppose I asked the question in relation to just trying to understand your influences in terms of, so the work that we see here seems quite plate-based. So large painting just here. Is that your home?
Well, it's a rental, but that's where I live.
Yeah. With the car out front. For those who listen on the audio. Yeah,
that's the car. That's the car, earlier incarnation of it. Yeah, so that's when it just had like the shapes were these like white abstract shapes.
Yeah.
And then, I really like the hedge at the front of the house, that I've sort of, but the thing is, I feel like I could do more work on that painting, but it just like, that's its current, state, but it'll likely get worked on again.
That's really, see, that interests me. So I don't have a background in painting, but that idea. So the fact that I already asked you about layers, but it's like, so you're exhibiting this now, and yet you're willing to work on it. Somewhat. You want to work on it somewhat. Yeah. So tell me about that. What's that all about?
Anything that doesn't sell, like, it's only if something sells that it's done.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like, because, I don't know, there's a part of me that's like, why hasn't it sold? Like, what else could I do to it?
Yeah.
And that might involve painting over the whole thing and just using the canvas or something, which probably doesn't happen as often as it used to. And, like, that would happen a lot before that even get outside the studio. But there's just like, I suppose because my work is built up with layers of like glazing, transparent color, and then building up. It's basically like a technique that goes back to the Renaissance, essentially.
Yep.
When it was developed, when they went from using like egg tempera and like these sort of materials that were, I guess, pretty flat and opaque, to then developing oil painting, where you could create these like transparent layers of color, so that then, you could make the whole work in just black and white, so monochrome or sepia or whatever, and then just glaze the color over the top. And so once you learn that skill, it just means that, for instance, this one is like, there's heaps I could do on that in terms of like I think the last time I worked on that was in a gallery in Melbourne, and then it's just been at my friend's house in Footscray until I got it back recently. But I was working right up until like the opening, basically in the gallery, and just putting on like highlights.
Yeah.
But when I look at it now, I'm like, oh, I can really see the highlights too much. Like they haven't integrated into the forms.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm like, it's too graphic.
Yep.
So like for a highlight to be really like natural, it needs to be sort of like singing, not like, like punching you in the face.
Yeah.
And so to integrate that back into the forms, I would likely, probably working from the shadows and create more like depth.
Yep.
But then also put more opaque paint on the forms to make the highlights, it's just this kind of like push and pull and play.
Yes.
But essentially it means that, and if you have a penchant for like going to like really fine detail, like, because I like the idea that, especially because I'm playing around with the viewers, I guess it's like your experience of the car, like, as opposed to seeing it online and actually seeing it in the space, you're like, oh, those bits are actually sticking out.
Yeah.
So when the viewer's in the space, I like them to be able to walk around and be like, oh, that's flat or whatever, or that bit actually comes out.
Yeah. But
not only that, but to be able to, like they do those double takes, but then when they do look closer, they're like, oh, that goes really into this weird little detailed bit, and then they can keep going deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes it becomes like pathological and probably just like really obsessive compulsive, and like the things that I'm doing, like people won't even see. Only me.
Yes.
I'll be like, you're so clever. But, it's like, what?
Sure.
Just an urge I'm trying to like deal with.
Yeah, but I mean, you put, so this work that you've just been referring to, and so, it's flowers in a vase, and there is some human,
more than that.
yeah. There's a lot going on, but that what I'm really thinking, and I've just noticed there's a sort of a smiling face down in the bottom.
Yeah, that's Astro Boy.
Astro Boy.
Yeah,
but there's so much of you in this. It's no wonder you just want to keep working. So every time you look at it, you obviously see something new.
Yeah, kind of. I guess, I suppose, well, like there's also this threshold of like whether or not I actually would work on that. There might need to be something that forced me to do that over starting a new work, which I'm probably at this juncture way more invested in. So like the flower, that one that I brought in this morning, that's my most recent work.
Yep.
And that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
I'm not there.
No.
Like I can see heaps of stuff, and I might just do some quick things to it that I know wouldn't take that long, but I probably wouldn't put too much into it.
So you just need to sell it then. Get it out of the way.
Yeah, well, sure. Yeah.
It's
good.
You've heard it here first.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, there is something about that though.
Yes.
When it's sold, like I feel almost like it was like the person that bought it is a collaborator.
Yes.
Because they've decided. They're like, this is finished.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like they've appreciated it enough to, part with their, their hard-earned money. And so it's like, well, that it sort of takes on a life of its own then.
Yeah,
like it becomes kind of concrete in the state that it's in, as an object even. Yeah.
I have a writer friend, and we used to take the trains to work together from London to Milton Keynes and back, and it was a really, not the greatest journey, but we talked about all sorts of stuff. And I remember one conversation where vividly it was really formative for myself as a writer, where I said, "Oh, how's your latest book going?" And I was referring to the one that was just published and had just done a book launch shop.
Yeah.
And he started telling me about the one he was writing at the time.
Oh, okay.
And so for him, and I sort of, after he told me, I said, well, actually, I meant the one that's on the shelves. And
we're in London now. Like, anyway, thanks for the story.
Yeah. But he, what he told me was, no, that's out in the world now. That's gone.
Yeah.
So I suppose if you have artwork your own work that is in your space, in your studio with you, around you, and you are noticing,
it still has a symbiotic relationship for sure. Yeah. Like you say, it's kind of part of me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, especially because, like, as you can see, like all the stuff is just always like flowing out, and it's almost like I've got little pockets of, like, the way that my all my various spaces are set up.
Yeah,
there's an order to it, but from the outside you'd be like, that's interesting. You're like, I wish we hadn't done the podcast at the studio.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued now that it's a space.
Welcome to come visit.
Thanks, I'd love to, Josh. Yeah, no, it's something that Laura Purcell talked about in the interview in her space, and Laura talked about having stations set up, so that then she could, however she was feeling, she could come in and work on certain things.
Yeah.
So that's how. So you're
and even, like, in terms of the like ideas and things, like there'll be, like a tray that's full of, like, recent and likely things to explore, or like objects that are interesting to look at in relation to what I'm currently, like the current paradigm of, like, what I want to explore on the easel. But then there's like, that stuff that is like more a bit sketchy, or like, excuse the pun, and so then, but then, like I mentioned previously, there's other things that I'm kind of interested in, like music and writing, and so then there's all that kind of, which I have separate stations for again.
Yes.
Yeah. So it becomes becomes pretty complicated, but I guess it's a matter of finding ways to make all that stuff. Like Laura was saying, like, I guess efficient. Like efficiency is like key. Yeah.
I can relate to that. I have this space at home, which is, it was set up as an academic office, but now I'm no longer an academic, full-time academic. I'm an independent researcher, but I'm a business owner. But also I have my photographic practice, and so it's this space that I'm actually trying to think through. How do I make it this sort of workshop, studio, office,
and this is in the one room.
But anyway, I mean, enough about me.
No, that's all right. I mean, it's like, I think from my experience, you just have to find ways for those things to settle in, settle into a flow in some.
So flow was the word you used before, and so I guess what I'm really interested in is the rhythm of your practice in or process, use of space. But it's, how do you flow through it, and what would an average day look like for Josh Foley in the studio?
Well, if I was being good, it would involve more painting and less music. Yeah. Because in recent history, I've probably spent more time doing music. Yeah. Yeah, which is like, I guess why when I have a show like this, I do like to do my performance stuff.
Yeah.
Because even though what I make might not be everyone's cup of tea, and I'm not expecting to be, a big rock star or anything, I feel like because I spend so much time doing it, I should at least occasionally present it.
Yeah.
Even if it's not for to make money or whatever. Because a typical day could involve me being like, okay, I'm all organized. I'm going to do some painting, but I might just play my guitar first or do something else. And then, do that for way too long. But I have been doing this breathing technique. So it usually starts with that. And again, that can get out of control.
Okay.
You're like, uh-oh. I just take this big deep breath. It's like, what does he mean it gets out of control? Just in terms of me doing it for too long.
Yep.
Because sometimes I do it for hours and hours.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that. I was saying to Laura in our interview, I've let my meditation practice go, but there is when you do have that daily ritual, that daily practice, and you start your day, it can take you to somewhere where. I don't know. For me, it was very comforting and I've been in situations where I don't want to stop doing that.
Yeah. It sort of becomes a bit addictive, I suppose.
Yep.
But in terms of clarity of mind and ideas and things like that,
yep.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Okay.
It's probably another quirk of me being in the neighborhood. But my neighbors probably already think I'm pretty out there, but if they see me on my front driveway doing this breathing, they'll be like, what's he doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm holding my breath and making noise and
but I think look, there are so many norms in society, and
that should be more normal, perhaps.
Well, indeed,
people doing that, and we should all be standing on our driveways.
I think. Look, I think the world will catch up to these sorts of things eventually.
Definitely.
But look, it's something that's really important to you and your practice.
Yeah.
And I think if your neighbours could understand what it is you do and why you do it, then perhaps they...
Well, they actually, it's interesting because sometimes, and this just speaks to not judging a book by its cover, but sometimes you get these impressions that are false, really. And one was there's an elderly couple that live just down the road, and my first interaction with one of them, I was sitting in my kitchen kind of looking down, and at that time I just started doing this side hustle as a gardener, and the front of my house was just insane, with green waste, and had no idea what I was doing, and paintings and just heaps. And I was watching her walk past, and she did a double take, and then her mouth dropped, she in horror. And I was just like, wow, that's quite the visceral reaction, And then when she looked up at me, I leered at her. Just to emphasize it. But it did kind of make me think I need to clean that up. But nevertheless, later on, myself and my kids were coming up from the school, the Trevelyan school, where we kick football and play basketball. And I kicked the soccer ball, I think, over that person's fence.
Oh, yeah.
And I went in to get it. And she was a really great lady, she's super lovely. And her husband, he actually stopped for a chat one day when I was finishing my car off, you know, and he was really interested and engaged and, you know, not conservative at all. So, you know, it just, people are more dynamic, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. They have their own
I
stories.
guess that's what your project is about too. It's people are creative in their own ways.
There's a political scientist, Chantal Mouffe, who talks about the power of the artist is really about showing us the way and helping us to question those norms, society norms.
I think so.
Yeah.
I like or inspire. Or, you know, like, like there's always this like great kind of feeling that's like different to say when a painting sells, which is like obviously a good feeling, but it's not the same as when you hear like somebody was inspired by your work. Like that's priceless. Yeah. Because it's like you could be, you know, because you don't always sell work, or you know, or your whatever work series you're working on isn't always like popular or understood or whatever. But if someone's like inspired to be creative, or you know, or like it helps their life somehow, then it's like, okay, I'm doing something that's like, you know, worthwhile other than just like fussing around in my studio trying to organise where all my ideas go and, you know, playing too much guitar.
And that is the wonderful thing about showing your work and performing in a space like this. So we're right in the centre of Launceston College in the gallery space, but it's just gone quiet for the first time.
Yeah, but probably lunchtimes.
Yes, but that's the thing is, right, there's all these young people, 17, 18 years old, who would have some sort of relationship with art or not. And they might just fixate on one of your pieces of work, or they might be inspired to come to the exhibition, to the opening tonight, or they might, I don't know, engage with it in some way and go away inspired. And you may never know that, but that's the wonderful thing, I think, about being in spaces like this. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
How did it come about?
I think Scott just asked me at some point. Yeah, like a while ago. And then I just was like, well, yeah, it's a nice space, and yeah, like you say, it's got that connection to, you know, I mean, maybe somebody gets inspired, or you know, it helps them see the world differently or whatever. But having my car parked out in the driveway there, it's definitely getting some, like, you know, like it must be, it's like an odd thing. Yeah. Like just one of those, like, oh, today's different because there was a weird car parked outside the common room.
Exactly. Yeah. It's that and it invites the question. Or, you know, so today was a weird day, but there'll be some people who think, okay, well, why is that there? And your website's on your car as well, so they might go to your website and then they might see that there's an exhibition, and it's sort of it takes them on a journey. And this is what Chantal Mouffe talks about in relation to Alfredo Jar's work. Sorry for the pronunciation, but by exhibiting in particular spaces, public spaces, or you know, we're in an educational space here. You know, it could transform someone's life.
Yeah,
it could take them down a path they never expected to go down.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the role. Yeah, and and then even adding, you know, like more obscure kinds of ideas or things as well that I guess take the sense of it being contained as well.
Yeah.
Because sometimes like a gallery space, it doesn't matter how out there the work is, it's like it's very contained within what it's doing or what it does. And then that again is what I like about the car is that it's like that's not contained.
No.
And it doesn't make sense in a way. You know, there's no real outcome other than it just looks insane. Yeah. And I think that's why kids really respond to it, because opens up this world of possibility, I suppose. It's like when every car looks the same, and then there's this one that's like, what, that doesn't fit within the whole scheme of what people do or are supposed to do or think about things. Yeah. And like somebody told me recently that, that their kid is like obsessed with my car. When it goes past, they're like freak out and stuff. And I'm just like, perfect. That's great.
Absolutely.
And I have so many like classic responses, like just pure visual, like kids like follow, stopping and following me as I go down, and the parents like sort of pulling them away. Like, come on, we got to go to school or something. Yeah. And or even, but I mean, I suppose I do like the dichotomy, like the provocation like aspect as well. And I think something that I always remember my lecturer, Deb Maylor, mentioned, I'm not sure if she was quoting us something or whatever, or it was just her opinion, but she said that you kind of want your work to be like loved or hated.
Yeah.
You don't want a kind of like weird in between. And, I enjoy almost just as much the distressed or disturbed or the quizzical looks I get from, just the Karens and the Kevins of the world. Sorry, all the cool Karens and Kevins out there.
No, but I think we can understand what you're referring to, and people who aren't ready to ask the questions of the lives they're living or the politics around them or whatever, and without being overtly political or critical, an artist is capable of putting work out into the world, performing in ways that enable others to respond in, and as you say, you however they respond, it's all positive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. I mean, even if it's like stimulated a disgust response or it's kind of maybe it'll make that person think, why are they disgusted, or confirm what they like, even if that is boring. But
but that's the one thing, right, is your work is definitely not boring. Something
it's almost too not boring. I find that sometimes I'm like, that's way too busy. Like, come on, just I think actually something I'm focusing on with my next works will be finding that balance, I think, and creating more space and more like room for things to progress in ways that aren't necessarily all turned to like 100,000. So
there's an attenuation to go back to the music.
Definitely the music reference is quite fitting because I do. Well, it's interesting because when I work in a public art context, like a mural or something, I do think in terms of like rhythm and that sort of thing, but not as much in work I might do on like a canvas or, but I think I am starting to do that more. Like with these two new works, there is more of a sense of like, there's like a rhythm and then there's like little melody elements and this sort of thing. And I think well, I was actually telling a friend this the other day, but I'm kind of at this juncture where I've done my car and I've like tied up all these loose ends and created kind of space for myself to kind of start like a new chapter. And what I have got on my computer is like a folder of all the works that I've made over the past like 15 years or something, that I'm like, oh, that bit, or, you know, oh, you did that really well, or, you know, so like just sort of trying to collect all those elements and then see if I can like, you know, use all the best aspects of my work to make new work.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of useful because in some ways my work is like a process-based kind of like almost scientific sort of endeavor. It's like, oh, what happens if you do this? And then you do it and like, oh, that's interesting or whatever. Or that's like horrible. You know, like there's all these sorts of things. And then, so I suppose like as a scientist would do, they collect all the data and then they arrange it and process it. And then they decide, okay, what are we going to explore now? Or how can we use this to create something new and whatever.
Yeah, right. So that's where you're at now. I mean, going back to just, you know, so the whole thing about connect, curate, create is to invite people into this conversation that you're having with your process. Yeah. And every episode, we always come back to process. And it's, I think if people understood the work that you actually put into making the artwork, then they might understand it a little bit better. But
rather than just see the finished product and just go, wow, that they do that.
Yeah, because I think we want to know how things are made. You know, people will. You know, they want to know how a barista makes an excellent coffee.
Yeah, it's interesting because like you hear that there's like a quip at one of the sort of like, maybe it's a bit of a cliche or whatever, and it always makes me just be like, I don't like what, like when people mention Bob Ross, because I guess, and like I have nothing against him or people that like him or whatever. Like I'm not like being judgmental, but I'm just, it's interesting in the sense that he really does illustrate his process.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like consistent and pretty much the same every time.
Yep.
And so it's reliably like, that's, you know, that's a thing. Whereas I guess I don't always know where it's going to go. Oh, it's kind of like a new recipe or something. And and I feel like that that is probably the bit that's less understood because it's not always clear.
And it's being comfortable with not knowing where it's going. And I think that's what that is for me, the part of what makes it art in some way. I mean, I'm not someone who went to art school. I didn't, you know, I've got no training whatsoever. But so a lot of what I'm doing in these interviews is trying to understand for myself what is art.
Yeah. So,
and so being comfortable with to allow your practice, your process, and all that knowledge, skill, experience that you bring to each piece, and trusting in that process.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my general principle in life was just learning. So it's like, whether or not it's like you're a plumber or whatever, it's like there's always better ways to do things and ways to grow and, you know, that kind of thing. So, I think if you approach your work as like a process of discovery, then that's art. It doesn't matter what it is. But if you're approaching it like, these are the set parameters, I'm going to do them, I've got this thing, and then that's that, and then where it's like, well, what are you learning there?
Yeah.
Like there's no like insight, or this like, it's kind of a fixed loop.
It's a
manufacturing be going backwards.
Yeah.
In fact, you'd be better off going backwards.
Yeah.
My band is called Stone Age Music.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a new thing because usually I'm just like Zydef, but because I'm playing with a cello player, Kat St. Evans, and a saxophone player, Damon Warner. Like, it's kind of like band enough to have a band name. And Kat and I came up with Stone Age Music.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's like the thing I like about it is that it is a bit like odd because it sounds like we'd be playing with like rocks but it's like, you know, there's drum machines and synthesizers and all this sort of stuff. But I just like the air of discovery or something, you know, like it's open-ended and it doesn't really make sense. It's a bit irrational. Yeah. And so, I suppose that feels like a good umbrella for like experimentation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it could be anything, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Around a fire or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because.
Sorry, my awkward segue.
No, it's fine.
Talk about my band.
No. And so the band that just opened up so many questions for me about the necessity of invention that Stone Age people would have. You know, for survival.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Well, the mothers of Frank Zappa and the mothers of invention. That's I'm happy with that reference. Yeah, that's great actually, because like, it's like, I feel like because it's a sort of it's an umbrella that does obviously conjure creativity and thought and people thinking about how does that relate or what is it? Yeah, and so that's actually confirmed it to me like that is a good name.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So and thank you.
Oh, no worries, Josh. No, so you're performing as a band tonight at the opening?
Yeah, just in that little nook over there. So
cool.
Probably start setting that up in a little bit.
Yes. No, look, I really appreciate your time.
Last time, Damon and I, it was just Damon and I, we actually played so Stefan from the Art Centre had that gallery space.
Yeah.
So I had a show in there, and that was, I think, the last time that Zydep came from Planet Xylos and did his thing, but he did it with Damon, and it was really loud.
Yeah.
And so everyone was just like standing out the front. They weren't even looking out the artwork because the music was so loud.
So that was a key learning.
Yeah, that was a little learning moment. So I'm trying to think about ways to mitigate that.
Look, again, you've just mentioned another layer to your practice, but actually, it's not just your practice; it's Zydep as well. So, who is Zydep?
Well. Initially, I think it was maybe 2006. That's around when I started teaching myself guitar, and I think I was going to do a performance with a friend who could actually play guitar, and we were like, "Oh, what's our band name going to be?" And we're standing around the kitchen, and at that time, I'm not now, not that it really matters. But I had some antidepressants, and the brand was called Zydep. It was like some generic brand of SSRIs. And we were like, oh, what about, it was just like completely random. Zydep, Quantum Toast and Crumpets, which was like on the toaster,
you know.
And so we performed as that, and then afterwards, like, we didn't really perform again. But I was like, well, what's Zydep all about? It's like, maybe I'm going to be Zydep from now on. So I just claimed it, and then performed again as him, like, and then have since like written about him, and concocted kind of a backstory that is from a planet where people don't have bodies or gender or anything. They're just like an emanation of color.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like an aura. There's just auras and sound, and that that's how you exist, and that's why he's had yellow skin, because he was yellow. So there's that's just like fantasy or whatever, but it's just like play, I guess, in a way. But I suppose that theatricality of like embodying a character, I do enjoy that aspect, and I think that it does have an inflection on the music somehow. Like,
Yep.
there is this sort of sci-fi quality to it that I enjoy, and it speaks to certain kind of psychedelic energy. And, you know, so I guess he's sort of like a locus point for a bunch of different interests and aesthetic sensibilities that I appreciate within music and art and whatever. And that, you know, he wears this like costume and whatever. But yeah, so that's kind of the story of Zyda.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, I think it would be wrong to put you in a box and say Josh Foley is a painter. There is so much to your practice.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's generally helpful to put anything in a box, but I feel like it's people do want resolution. Yeah, they want like, and I think in some ways that's part of why. So like I've done a couple of novels and written stuff as well, and I have a different alter ego for that, Wolfgang. And I think part of the conceit of doing this and having these kind of alter egos is that like our identity is not fixed. It's very malleable from day to day, hour to hour, you know, and it's like just as much about who we tell ourselves we are is who we are as it is who we are, you know. And so in terms of a voice or a perspective, you can create that. And so I think there was this juncture, and it must have been around 2006 or something, where I was like, no, I'm interested in doing all these other things. You know, I'm just like, I read a lot, I listen to a lot of music, I want to do that too. So I would just like practice those things as well alongside painting. But then I just thought like, oh, well, I'm out there as Josh Foley exhibiting all the time and, you know, doing and have this sort of presentation of that. And the idea of doing all these other things as Josh Foley as well just felt like super exhausting for like me and for everyone else. Yeah. You know, like it'd just be like, it's too much, you know, like I just think it sort of just drowns each other out. And because in some ways it is a different personality or voice or something that, you know, I'm coming at these things from. And now that I've done them for so long, they really do have kind of their own life. Like I've performed as Zydep now like 20 times or so, like over the years in various like, you know, pubs and museums and, you know, all sorts of things. So, yeah, and done things as Wolfgang as well. So, you know, it's, I think it's just a useful creative strategy. Yeah. I think people should do it more.
Yeah. No, it's got me thinking.
Yeah.
Look,
well, I mean, you could have one for your photography.
Yeah, well, I'd really need it. That's one of my dilemmas is how
exactly. Yeah, because like even just in terms of how people interact with the work, because you know you could say it's about branding or something, but sometimes those sorts of things, it's more to do with like framing.
Yeah.
You know, and so if somebody knows you, say, on this level of like Tim, the podcaster, and then when they're looking at your photography, it might be coming from a completely different place that this is.
Yeah.
You know, and hence like you might want to define it as something different. I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, you don't have to either, but it's just like, that's something I find useful anyway. Yeah.
Thanks. That's probably a conversation with you another time. When I come to your studio.
Well, sure.
I'll bring the coffees and we'll have a good chat about that.
Yeah.
Just some breathing beforehand.
Yeah. No worries.
But Look, I am sort of wrapping up just because, look, I think we might have broken the record on
Oh, really?
this. We've been talking for ages and ages and ages.
Cool.
But I am just, I could keep, I mean, Josh, my concern is you've got a opening tonight. You've got to set up to get ready for the band.
Yeah.
And
I'm gonna make like some drum loops and and learn a new bass synthesizer. So
oh my goodness.
Yeah. I said to Damon, the saxophone player, like, I'll have everything organised and ready, because last time I didn't, and he kind of saved the day. So yeah, I probably should go and sort that out.
Yes, but so how long's the exhibition for?
So it opens tonight, is on till the 6th of September.
Okay.
And I guess it's just opening during like school hours, 10 to 3 p.m.
Yeah.
School days. Yeah.
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 Okay.
And it's at Launceston College. I don't know if
we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably go through the reception. Don't just like wander around.
Yes. No, I had a visitor pass.
Not the moon.
Thrust in my hand as I arrived. So yeah, make sure you check in before you come, but it's well worth it. And yeah, Josh, look, you said you're exploring new things, and I will be thrilled to follow your progress.
Thank you, Tim.
And see where you're heading. It's so great to meet you, and I do feel like I could ask you a million more questions because you've just opened up so many ideas for me.
Probably waffle on.
No,
each one.
no, not at all. It's really great, and perhaps we could have you on the podcast again sometime in the future when you got more new work or your next show.
Hopefully made some really great things.
Yeah. Look, again, thank you so much for your time. It's these are very special things for me, and listeners, I know, appreciate the sorts of things that you're talking about. You know, we all take something away from it. So thank you, Josh.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Connect, Curate, Create. I hope you found inspiration and insights that you can apply to your own creative work. For highlights and links, check out the show notes. And be sure to follow us on your favourite podcast player so you never miss an episode. Tune in next time as I continue to explore life and work in the arts.